Right. The next item is news round, unless anybody else had anything on the minutes from last month.
No.
Let's go to the Roy's news round then, and he's being recorded.
Okay. Right. Okay. It starts on the 10th of February, where there was another report about the 3,000 new jobs at Hinkley, which is just the workforce uplift from 12 to 15,000, which will happen over the next 18 months. The local press have got extremely excited about this, though, because EDF says it will create new opportunities for local people. But it's not 3,000 local people, because there aren't that number of suitably skilled local people to go for the 3,000 specifically skilled jobs. So it's more, it's more. It's a mirage that it's much better than it is. There's quite a bit in the news round about Sizewell C, because that is a bone of contention in many ways. There's an article by the BBC about all the tree felling and the clearances, access roads, lots of site prep work, basically. But of course, that's a shock, because it takes a lot of site prep work to set up the size of site you need for the EPR reactor, as we've seen here. Here's a lovely one. The 12th of February, the Ipswich Star. The developers of Sizewell C say they are confident that the project is progressing on time and to budget, as they offered a rare peek into the work going on. Being able to use the template from HPC, where construction of the same nuclear plant design began in March 2017, well, that's a moot point, has been a huge benefit, they say. What we have seen is things that took 8 years at Hinkley C, we are doing in 3, said Sizewell C Joint Managing Director Nigel Cann. Well, we all remember Nigel. Yeah. Whatever Hinkley do, we'll do better. Yeah, right. Well, see about that. That's interesting. Next, we go national again. Great British Nuclear has confirmed that the winners of its small modular reactor competition will be announced around the time of the spending review on the 11th of June, despite reports it would take place on the 26th of March at the spring statement. So I think that's a deferment while they give themselves more time to make their minds up. World Nuclear News reported the last Russian incident, Russian causation of damage at Chernobyl, where a drone was reported to have struck the roof. And it does say radiation levels inside and outside remain normal and stable. Although a picture I saw of the damage on the telly didn't look that normal or stable. New jobs from SMRs are a focus of local attention wherever they pop up. Gloucestershire, where you've got 2 former nuclear sites at Berkeley and Oldbury, development of those for SMRs would bring in millions of pounds to the local economy. Yeah. What's that? Oh, yeah. X Energy, which is an Amazon-backed developer of advanced modular reactors, which is reactors that want to be small but don't fit in the small modular reactor bracket, is in discussions with EDF over a joint project to build 1 or more units on the site of the Hartlepool nuclear power plant in County Durham, which is due to be decommissioned in 2027. So they'll hardly have time to do any decommissioning before... No, they won't. There'll be loads of time before they got an SMR that works, or and an AMR, even worse. A nice piece from the middle of February about a Czech capital investment in Rolls-Royce, their SMR and cooperation on development construction not going smoothly. According to well-informed sources of the Czech newspaper, negotiations are starting to falter. The Czechs and the British have different expectations, for example, regarding where the production of the main parts of the reactor will be located. Well, there you go. Back to Sizewell. Centrica has announced plans to invest in Sizewell C, but campaigners say the move demonstrates Stop Sizewell, saying that the move demonstrates the government's poor negotiating position. Any investors in the project could demand higher rates of return, piling further costs on consumer bills. So that's not a good one. A long piece from the Financial Times. I'm not going to do the whole of it, but basically it was the story that EDF, well, firstly, they haven't found any alternative investors for Hinkley C, so they are in bother. In the current circumstances, the fact that our partner, the Chinese nuclear company, is not injecting any more into capital is an extra weight for EDF. But it remains a potentially profitable investment. But the future is still in doubt unless EDF can twist the arm of our government to put money into it to help to bail them out. And there's another one from Sizewell. Residents fear being priced out of Suffolk town due to the construction of Sizewell C. Some family homes' rent has doubled to more than £3,000 a month, and they're only on site preparation. Just wait till it moves to 7,900 workers. That'll be not an entertainment. A local piece in the Midsummer Journal, just up in North Somerset, that construction worker shortage because of the gigafactory for batteries at Bridgewater and HPC put further pressure on construction jobs in the southwest, which is interesting because the number of civils workers at Hinkley C, while still relatively high, is considerably less than ever there was when site prep and early construction work was going on, when the civils were the bulk of the 5,600 workforce.
What are civils? Sizzles? Civils?
Civil engineers.
Civils are people who move, the people who earth moving and basic construction work. So people whose skills are transferable from the building industry and anything to do with site preparation work on a building site. You've only to look at the local house build there, where they've been moving earth for months, and there's still no sign of a foundation of any of the 1,000 houses that are meant to be going there. And they've been moving earth for, I would say, 6 months. Sellafield in bother because although the Nuclear Decommissioning Authority have allocated them nearly £3 billion out of the 4 billion, which is all the NDA have got, that's not enough for what they need to. They've got difficult decisions to make about avoiding an overspend on what they've got to do. So jobs and safety at Sellafield are bother. Joe got a letter about how Hinkley C will become the Sellafield of the South into the Bridgewater Mercury. And at the end of February, the acoustic fish deterrent issue was still very, very live. And the Rivers Trust charity was busy organising a petition to retain the acoustic fish deterrent, which was a good thing, and was the the momentum behind encouraging EDF to retain the acoustic fish deterrent was very much on the ascendancy at the end of February. I got a letter into the Bridgewater Mercury. I'd long ago given up on their postbag, but lo and behold, Joe and I got 2 letters in the same edition. It was wonderful. And mine was about stopping government handouts to EDF for Hinkley Point C. A worthy cause. The really good news of the news round, of course, came on the 4th of March when EDF, although pointed out that an acoustic fish deterrent was in the planning consent in 2013, but at the same time, at that time, large-scale AFD devices were an emerging technology. Since then, they found that they make the case for dropping it with the problems with going underwater and the risks for divers. And that's, they say, why they went for the salt marsh. But now we recently became aware of a new type of acoustic fish deterrent system that could be installed and operated in a way likely to be safe and effective in the murky waters of the Severn. This innovative solution was not known to us when we launched meetings with communities last year about salt marsh mitigation. So this different type of technology, pioneered in the Southwest, is proven and deployed internationally, and it's now the project's preferred solution. And we're working with experts to provide the scientific data to underpin the case for using it at Hinkley C. And although it didn't say it in that part of the statement says we will be dropping the plan to remove the acoustic fish deterrent from our material change application to the material change to the development consent order application, which they're obviously still developing to go to the planning inspectorate. And of course, that brought widespread celebrations to those communities in Kingston, Seymour, Littleton, Arlingham and Rodley, as all threatened with salt marsh. And don't forget, Paulet Hams preceded those and got the let off when EDF discovered that they couldn't count it for mitigation twice. But they are all obviously delighted that something is happening that really takes away, all things being equal. An AFD just removes the need for their land, their localities to become sacrificial salt marsh, which won't save any fish lives, but is just in the scales of mitigation somewhere. The West Somerset, this is the last piece, the West Somerset Free Press on the 8th of March came up with a very good analysis of the way the acoustic fish deterrent system could be useful. And they point out some of the ways in which the new FDs are already being used in fishing fleets around the world, which begs the question, why did EDF insist on only looking at one type of acoustic fish deterrent and deciding that it was unsuitable for the Hinkley C situation, and then a move immediately to fund some form of environmental mitigation, rather than look around the marketplace and come up with an acoustic fish deterrent which would work and be suitable at Hinkley C? All the time and effort and the grief they've caused those people in the salt marsh zones could have been avoided, and they could have saved a lot of time and effort. And we put effort into going to the consultations and making our case there. Though I do think that it was the weight of the opposition from the affected communities and the fact that they found something that they think will work that's got them over the hurdle they made for themselves. And here ends the...
Could I just add a point there, Roy? Could I just say something that I was in the communications EDF made about that? They said they were pausing. They were pausing.
Yes. That's correct. That's right.
And I thought that was an awful thing to say, because they're basically saying to those communities that they might still do it at some point in the future.
I appreciate that. But for the okay, I take that point. The last paragraph in the West Somerset Free Press was that Andrew Cockcroft also said, until the scientific work on the acoustic fish disparate is complete, we are not yet able to rule out the need for salt marsh creation in the future.
Mm.
He's covering his back.
Yeah.
Because they've clearly only just found out about this, and until they've got their so-called experts to have given it the twice over, they've got to keep that open, because that is their fallback position.
Mm.
If they can't find an AFD that works, then we're back on the process of facing people with eventually compulsory purchase orders if they can convince the planning inspectorate that salt marsh mitigation would do the business. But the fact that they have found something is at least a respite.
Doesn't it show that they're a bit hopeless when these things have been proven internationally already? So they've obviously been operating around the world and on fishing vessels, and yet they've only just discovered it.
It's ridiculous.
What the hell are they playing at?
No idea. Well, they were making work for the like of the obnoxious man who gave Whitehall and the skeptical press the fish disco. I mean, that was all down to the EDF guy saying how loud the speakers would be if they were in the open air, which of course they're deep down in the Severn, so no one would ever have heard them. But he gave that fish disco idea out, and of course lots of people, even the Prime Minister, not fully understanding what the issue actually was, went along with that as a derogatory term, which the popular press happily caught onto.
2 points, Roy. One, the Rolls-Royce were getting very close to, as you say, to the Czech Republic wanting to build the Rolls-Royce SMR.
Yeah.
Where the difference is that the Czech Republic wanted to build a lot of the major parts in the Czech Republic themselves, whereas Rolls-Royce want to choose the main parts to be built in South Korea.
Yes.
Which is ridiculous. This is supposed to be GB nuclear.
It's not, exactly. It's not here. And of course, as we know, Rolls-Royce aren't moving a muscle till they get an undertaking from the government to underwrite all the research and development work before they've even got one working, and to place an order for, was it about 30 of them before they'll move a muscle. Yeah. So, you know, the whole, and as you say, they don't actually want to build them here. They just want the Rolls-Royce name to go with them, which creates the illusion. I mean, MG cars, all right? I used to drive an MG car. It's just a British mark that goes on to Chinese cars and Chinese technology. So it's an illusion, smoke and mirrors.
Just one more point about the Great British Nuclear, because obviously when they looked to see about the winners of this competition, originally they were talking about 3 forms of the SMRs, whereas now there seems to be knowledge coming out that because of Rachel Reeves is under so much pressure financially, they may cut it down to just 2 SMRs that they're going to develop,
or even 1.
Yeah,
the Telegraph said 1.
Yeah.
All right. So there's huge financial pressure, especially with Rachel Reeves trying to balance books, which will be impossible with nuclear.
Of course, and that's why the government will be very reluctant to put any of its money into Hinkley C, because that completely exposes the illusion they've created over the years that there's no government, none of our money has gone into Hinkley C during construction. We just pay the exorbitant price of electricity, and it puts an immediate pressure on the Treasury to fund Sizewell C if they make a decision to go ahead with that sometime later this year. Okay. Any other questions about the news round?
No.
Got one question.
Yes.
Removing the AFD, does this make it a non-material DCO change? Because from my understanding, it was the AFD that made the suite of changes into a material one. Then they've got to go through the entire DCO process.
Right. There are several parts of the material changes that EDF wants to make, Sebastian. One is they want to change the storage method for nuclear waste at Hinkley C from a wet method to a dry method. They've got some things about buildings and creating a permanent substation there. And the other one was removing the acoustic fish deterrent, which was part of the planning application, and not having it is a material change. So that's what's happening. So now, if they're going to keep the acoustic fish deterrent, it doesn't become a material. They're no longer wanting to make a material change over the acoustic fish deterrent issue.
They don't have to apply for a different type of AFD.
No, I'm not aware that there's anything specific about what sort. I mean, we never waded through the hundreds of thousands of pages of detail about what was in the original development consent order. And even if it said the AFD has to be fit for purpose, which I'm sure somewhere it will have said, because the Environment Agency will have wanted that as a underwritten to be the fact. There was never any commitment to a particular make or model of AFD in the DCO. And we haven't looked at any, I mean, virtually everything that goes there, someone supplied a specification for it, or competing companies supply different specifications for two different things to do the same job. And EDF decides which of those it's going to buy, or the contractors decide which of those is going to go and what's going to go in the actual thing. And nobody outside the company has any say about that. And it's hard to believe that unless the regulator alerted to the acoustic fish deterrent issue was to look at what's proposed and say this won't do the job, then I think that's about the only say one could expect to have in what sort of acoustic fish deterrent is actually installed.
Mm.
Mm. Okay.
But I think we should question EDF about, I've seen lots of little questions that people want to put together. The problem with with any of the forum meetings is you can only pre-submit 2 questions. So if there are lots of things you want to ask, you can put a main question into the pre-submission, but people who are there will have to verbally ask the detail part of things, which I've seen as suggestions for things that get asked on Thursday night. And the best one can hope for, because I'm doubt whether they've got the detailed knowledge, will be there at the Transport Forum, which is full of transport-orientated people, and Andrew Cockcroft making the progress report presentation. Andrew does know a lot about what's happening, but I would be surprised if he's got the sort of detail that people were mentioning earlier today that we should be asking about at the Transport Forum. But there's no harm in asking, because they can become after notes that EDF will answer in time, and they'll be in the report of the meeting before it gets to the next time. But we also have to make sure we quiz them at Community Forum, because those are 2 trains running on parallel tracks. They don't cross over and share information.